this morning, but he's on the telephone with us right now. He is Brian Kilmeade. Good morning.
Hey, good morning to you, or good afternoon whenever we're listening.
We're listening this morning, right in anticipation of your show. I have to tell you, yesterday I got a call, said, "You're talking to Kilmeade tomorrow?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "There's been this debate on Fox and Friends about real trees, and Indiana County's the Christmas tree capital of the world." And he says, "I just want you to thank Brian on my behalf as a member of the Christmas tree growers for advocating for real trees."
Not only did I have real trees, I believe that you can't have Christmas without a real tree unless you're prevented from doing it when you're in a condo or an apartment building. But when we were little, we used to get trees with the roots, and we used to plant them in the backyard afterwards. And they would be considerably smaller, but we loved the idea of watching the trees grow from past Christmases.
That's beautiful, beautiful. And as he pointed out, and as you have, those are grown right here in America, and they're not being imported from China.
Thank goodness, yeah. I'm pretty sure even the Chinese couldn't do that cheaper than us.
We hope not. The book is Andrew Jackson and the Miracle of New Orleans, the battle that shaped America's destiny. Of course, we've been hearing about it on the Brian Kilmeade Show here on WCCS, and boy, the reception to this book, just like the others, Brian, has been incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I just think people fundamentally are patriotic, and if you could tell a story that moves, that's accurate, that informs people of something maybe they don't have details on, I think there's an appetite for it. You know, I read Ron Chernow's book. I read 400 pages. I'm not a third through. It's fantastic on Grant, but I can't do that. I'm reading what John Meacham did, a comprehensive biography on Andrew Jackson. That's not me. But if I could get one battle that I think really is underappreciated for its impact on America's future, about a guy that everybody knows, then I thought, that's something I think the American people might be able to digest, and as they seem to. Right now, it's number 5 on the list.
It's amazing to me how every book that you write seems to have some application to what's going on in Washington or in the country right now, even though it's a historical figure from 200 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's just luck. I wish I could say I planned it, but when we started doing George Washington's Secret Six, it was 20 years ago. I've been studying this spy ring that Washington set up, almost to convince myself it didn't happen, because it's so compelling. And it was top secret till 1930. They lived and died without anybody giving them any credit for what they did. And then I visit the CIA, and you get to know that they teach some of these things to current agents today. And then next thing you know, there's a CIA scandal, and people talk about waterboarding, and that came out. Then we have this war in Libya, and Benghazi happened. Well, a year before that, I was working on Thomas Jefferson and his fight against Islamic extremists in Tripoli, which is now Libya. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea that everyone would know the major cities in Libya by the time the book came out. And now I had no idea President Trump was going to be President Trump, even running for that. And Andrew Jackson is so similar to President Trump in terms of their candidacy that there's a lot of parallels. That's why his portrait's up in the White House. So it seems like, and again, Andrew Jackson was also obsessed with the media. President Trump is obsessed with the media. He was a populist. This current president's a populist. There's so many similarities. But I also think there's a fundamental war on history right now. I think you find that, too, with your listeners, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about this particular battle, the Battle of New Orleans, and the challenges that just seem to be thrown up into the face of Andrew Jackson and how he just swatted them aside.
I mean, just picture this. We know about the Revolutionary War, and not many people appreciate how it was unfathomable that we win it. Well, the British never got over it. 29 years later, they wanted another shot at us, and they basically totally abused us, did not adhere to the treaty, the peace treaty that we signed after the war. They stayed in the Midwest. They stayed in Michigan. They stayed in Ohio. They kept taking our guys off merchant and military ships and using them in their Navy to fight the French. And finally, when the War Hawks got elected, they decided we're going to go to war, and Madison had his war. And next thing you know, we realized we're not able to fight the British. Our Navy was good, but they weren't as big. Well, we didn't have a standing army. They did. They were fighting and winning all over the world. We weren't. And next thing you know, we're getting annihilated in this war. The whole East Coast is being paralyzed and terrorized. The White House is burned to the ground, and suddenly Americans do what we always do. We adjust. We mount tactics. We rally. When they burned the White House and the Capitol building, then the Americans realized we're fighting for our lives. And we stood tall in Baltimore. That's where I thought about doing the book. And you remember Francis Scott Key talked about the flag still being there. That's because Fort McHenry stood against the mighty British Navy. And then they said, we're just going to take you out in New Orleans. And Jackson, who had some success, said, I'll take my 1,400 men. I'll meet you there. They had 10,000. He enlists another 2,000, 3,000, and he takes on this monster army in Britain. And he comes up with this genius battle plan, which I chronicle in the book. It'll be on a special on December 10th on Fox News at 8 o'clock. And he comes up with a berm and digs a moat and comes up with this firepower, puts together free blacks, puts together Cajuns, Tennesseans, Kentuckians, regular military, pirates. And next thing you know, we got this truly American diverse army that not only do we win, we take out the British in under 45 minutes.
Amazing. I remember talking with Lynn Cheney a couple of years ago when she wrote the book about James Madison and how they looked at the War of 1812. Madison and Jackson didn't exactly see eye to eye. Jackson had to win some confidence there, didn't he?
He did, and no one, just like today, he wasn't one of the Washington elite. He wasn't one of these generals that made their, got elected and got other people elected. No one, they knew of him. They didn't know him. They thought he was a backwoodsman, some raw fighter from down south, militia general. In the beginning, he volunteers. He goes, I want revenge. They killed my brothers. The British have tortured my family for generations. I want a shot at this. And they said, we'll get a hold of you if we need you. When every other general has been tried, that's when Madison and Monroe looked to Jackson. And Jackson ended up so famous. He was the most famous man in America by the time that battle was over in 1815, January 8th. And next thing you know, he propelled that to 2 terms in the White House. So a 13-year-old orphan becomes a 2-term president. That's an American success story. Was he perfect? No. Was every policy great? Absolutely not. Did I love the fact that he had slaves? Absolutely not. Did his Trail of Tears echo of the times? Was it handled correctly? No. But did he take on the big banks? Did he give the average everyday person a voice? Did he show Americans that you didn't have to be born into the elite or a founding father sibling to become president? Yes. And I think he was, he died an iconic figure. Reagan, Truman, FDR, Teddy Roosevelt, Lincoln all looked up to him as a model. So that's good enough for me to say this guy is noteworthy to chronicle his life.
Just a couple of moments left with Brian Kilmeade. The Brian Kilmeade Show coming your way just a couple of moments as well here on WCCS. The story that you dig up about the Ursuline nuns, I was not aware of that before. I thought I had read everything to read about the Battle of New Orleans. That's fascinating.
Still there today. The convent's still there. And the Ursuline nuns were when Jefferson pulled off the Louisiana Purchase, they met with Jefferson and they said, "Listen, what's going to be our future?" And they said, "As long as I'm here, you're there." And they said, "Great." When the British were going to take New Orleans, and they thought the British were going to do what they did everywhere else and destroy it, they were scared to death. They met with Jackson and said, "What happens to us?" He says, "I'll protect you." He goes, "Good, then we'll pray for you." And they all prayed, and they also made the rest of the convent a makeshift hospital. And they believed, and Jackson always believed, that there was divine intervention in the battle thanks to those nuns. And every January 8th from 1815 to today, they celebrate that moment. They go outside, they bang pots and pans, and they thank God for Jackson's victory. And 25 years later, as I write in the book, Jackson went back there, and he went back to visit the nuns and said, "Listen, without you, I'm not president, and without you, we don't win."
George Washington's Secret Six, Thomas Jefferson, the Tripoli Pirates, now Andrew Jackson and the Miracle of New Orleans, the battle that shaped America's destiny. He's slowly making his way toward the 20th century. Brian Kilmeade, thanks for being with us this morning.
Thanks so much. If anybody wants to order the book and can't get it, go to briankilmeade.com. I could personalize it for you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you. There's Brian Kilmeade with us this morning here on Indiana in the Morning. Presented by First Commonwealth Bank, WCCS, AM 1160 and FM 101.1. I always like to hook up with Brian, and when he has a new book out, he's very kind to get to us eventually. I mean, you've got so many people that are after him for this, and, it's just a terrific read. And the